Guys, today we're going to take a look at TSA approved survival items that you have on your carry-on. Now, a lot of items you can check, but having those items on your person while you're flying in your carry-on gives you needed survival supplies plus a few other items. And we're going to start out with a very small pack. We're going to jump up to a little bit larger, and then we're going to go to a much larger pack. The bigger your pack, the more capable it's going to be. But is it practical? And also, you can just put these items in your carry-on bag, whatever that is. And that's one reason why I like to have a small little pouch that's dedicated to those items. I know I can find them. For that matter, you can have a whole backpack, sling pack, whatever, just filled with survival items. Now, when you get to your destination is really where those survival items can be needed, not necessarily in the air. So this gives you the items you need while you're away from home, typically a long distance, and it just gives you a fighting chance. Guys, in the description, we're going to have the list from TSA that shows items that are allowed and prohibited, both carry-on and checked items. Also, if there's something that you've had an experience with TSA concerning especially survival items, make sure you leave that down in the comments. Well, guys, first thing is to kind of choose a pack. Whatever your carry-on is, if it's a backpack, sling pack, it's a little duffel bag, and being able to have enough room to put more items or additional items in there. So there's going to be some choices made, and really once we go through all the different items that we're going to show you, I would lay certain ones out and then pick from there, which we're going to do toward the end. Now, first off, have a small little pack like this, a little Maxpedition pack. These are great. A little Roaring Fire, and this is a Picofire Pro. This is one of my favorite packs. And then standard little Molly attachment pouch, which these are great. Another Roaring Fire, and we have a Maxpedition. This is a fanny pack. We did a full review on this, but this is going to be larger. So you're starting to get into larger. The Vertex S.O.C.P. This is a great setup. And then we have another fanny pack from Roaring Fire, and from Paladin we have just the Poppies of War, which this is pretty cool. But this is a more thin pack. Just picking the right size for you is going to be vital to fit the items that you're looking for. And I'll have a list of all these different pouches down below in the description. Now, we do want to talk about prohibited items, and that goes for carry-on. A lot of these items you can carry as checked luggage. You can put it in, you can work with TSA. They have certain parameters, but of course, first thing is a knife is a big no-no, especially one that has any kind of tip. Some that have rounded off edges, they can be used, but they're very funny about just the blade itself. So knives generally are not going to be allowed. And of course, multi-tools, same thing, because most multi-tools have a blade. Now, there are some TSA approved multi-tools made by Leatherman and S.O.G. and probably Gerber. But even those are subject to the discretion of your TSA agent. And so just remember that they could pull something, and again, it's at their discretion. Also, a razor blade. That's, again, not going to be permitted. Even a small little tiny knife like this little Victorinox, I mean, it has a tiny blade, but again, these are just prohibited items. Again, can be checked. Now, flashlights over 7 inches are prohibited, and ferro rods and torch lighters. Now, torch lighters, definitely, I don't even think you can check these. I think this is something that's just out. In fact, any kind of butane or a lot of different fuels. And that's pretty obvious. But of course, that goes along with spear guns, hand grenades, gasoline, propane, I mean, you name it. And there is a list of different items that are allowed and prohibited. I'll have the link down below in the description. It's tsa.gov, but it has a really great list for checked items and for those you can carry on. Now, when it comes to survival kits, get-home bags, bug-out bags, even our regular supplies, we always go by the rule of threes. You can live 3 minutes without air, 3 hours in extreme harsh conditions, hot or cold. You can only live 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, medical and self-defense flow in between. So first off, we're going to have a bandana or some kind of mask or face covering. And this is going to keep dust and debris, smoke, things like that. It's going to help protect somewhat. And so I like to have a bandana with me in all my survival kits. They have so many uses. Then when it comes to 3 hours, we're looking at shelter. And here we have a number of different choices. You can go with just your standard little small emergency space blanket. This is an upgraded one. It's a little bit tougher, and it has the two sides with the signaling. And then we have one of the SOL emergency blankets, and then the SOL emergency bivvy, which fits in here. And this is very similar to your standard space blanket, but you can actually get inside. And it does have a green color. They have a number of different options. So having something really small to be able to protect you, because it could be cold, extreme cold, or it could be extreme heat, and this will work as a shelter. Water, you can only live 3 days without it, and so that is going to be a vital part. There are a number of options, and there are some big options, but we're going to kind of look at some of the more bare bones setups. Here we have aqua tabs, and this is probably the easiest. These are water purifiers. They're easy to store. You drop this in the water. It doesn't change the taste or the smell, but it makes it safe to drink. Then we have our Aquamira filter straw. Now this is something that I carry in all my packs. It's so tiny, and I love that, and it will filter 11 gallons of water. There is a larger one, which is the Pro model, and it's even better, but it's bigger. Now a lot of people love the Sawyer Mini, and this is a great setup. It even comes with a small bag, so you do have a reservoir, and this just gives you a lot of options, but it is bigger, so you have to weigh that out. But then having a way to hold water, you can take an empty plastic bottle, but you can't have it filled with water. In fact, all liquids cannot exceed 3.4 ounces, fluid ounces. And typically they have water on the plane as well, but this will give you a way, if you have to fill this with water, put in your tabs, drink from the filter. Of course, these are small, and these are lock sacks. These are great. They're waterproof. They're really protective, and they can be used for multiple things. And there's a lot of different sizes. Now, next comes food. You can live 3 weeks without food, but food builds morale. It gives you energy, so it's great to keep up those calories. I like the lifeboat bars. These are shelf stable for 5 years. They are high in calories. In fact, I think this is 2,600 calories. So this really goes a long way. But as you can see, it's big and it's heavy. So I really, for this kind of situation, I like maybe some Cliff bars or protein bars, something small, easy to pack. So this would really be my choice. Having a spork, this cannot have any sharp edges, but it can have these little tines, and you do have a bottle opener. And this is a CRKT, great little, very minimal spork. But also electrolytes, and this could have gone with water, but this is going to give you nutrients. It's going to build your body up, and so having some electrolyte little packages could help keep you hydrated. Medical flows in between. A situation can happen at any time. So first off, I really like to have just your basics. Band-Aids, hand sanitizers, or alcohol prep pads, and some gauze. And these little kits are tiny, and they're from Johnson & Johnson. You can get some different sizes, but this is a really small option. I want to put a little bit of extra gauze in here. That gives me just a boost, and antibiotic ointment or Neosporin. This is something that's great to have just to keep infection down. Now, one thing though that I like as far as for trauma is this is the first responders little kit from amp3.net, and this is from USN ER Doc. It's actually in a lock sack, and it has nitrile gloves, it has a compressed gauze or bandage, and it has a SWAT-T tourniquet. I love cat tourniquets, and you can actually add that in if you want. And set up your trauma kit a little differently, but this is a very minimal option, and that's really what I'm looking for. But for standard first aid, this works really well. And trauma shears, they can be a carry-on as well. From the joint, it can not exceed 4 inches. So this is a really small option, and so this can be used in your kit. Light is a very important part. It's your #1 security tool. You can carry a flashlight. There are a few parameters, but you can carry a very small light like this little i3T EOS, which takes a AA battery, or the i3E EOS, which takes a AAA. And then here we have an older Olight, and this is actually the S2A baton, takes 2 AA batteries. If I want to step it up to a lithium, you can take those as well. They can't exceed 100 watts. Now how they're going to know that, I don't know. But here we have the Arcfeld Ultra. This is one light that, in fact, a number of my friends have been going through TSA with these, and they'll stop them and ask them because it's not a traditional shape. But then once they look at it, they send them through. Also, we have the Olight Warrior Mini 3, and this is a great option. I like that it has a very light crenulated bezel, one of the things you may have a problem with if you have an aggressive crenulated bezel, you may get that taken. But here, this can even be used as a self-defense option. And then I have the O-Clip Pro Ultra, which I love this. These are so handy and so versatile. But my number one favorite is a headlamp because I like the hands-free option. I can still use this as a dedicated light, but this is, to me, if I only had one light, it would be a headlamp. But it is a little big as far as a minimal survival kit, so you have to weigh out your options. But again, a light over 7 inches is going to be prohibited, and if it has a massive crenulated bezel, that will as well. Now, having some repair items like zip ties, 10 feet of paracord or less, and you can have some duct tape and also safety pins. And these can do a lot of different repairs, and so it's great to have a small little repair section. A small compass for navigation, especially when you reach your destination. You may be in an area you don't know, and this will at least give you a bearing. And you can have a small button compass, but having a couple even works better. You don't necessarily need a larger compass, but you could get a Sunto and have just according again to your kit. And having a whistle. Now, a whistle serves a number of different options. If you're lost, you can be found, start blowing a whistle. In bear country, blowing a whistle is important to kind of warn them ahead of time. But one thing I like these for too is in an emergency situation when people are running around and yelling and there's a crowd, a whistle will stand above the crowd. And so having a whistle also for security. In case for some reason you're being attacked, you can start blowing the whistle. So I've really gotten to where I carry whistles wherever I go because they do serve a lot of purposes. Now, having a fire kit is going to be important. It boils your water, cooks your food, gives you light, and gives you heat, and it's primal. These are some items that are approved by TSA for carry-on, and one is a Bic lighter. These disposable lighters, I believe you have to put them in your pocket. I'm not positive about that. But also matches, as long as they're strike-on-the-box matches and not strike-anywhere matches. And then we have one of the Exotac fire sleeves, and this has a waterproof case, and also you can use this to hold down your flame. These are great little items. Exotac makes some pretty cool stuff. But also you need to have fire tinder, and having chapstick, this is flammable. You can use this. Also Vaseline. We do a lot with Vaseline and cotton balls for fire tinder. And it can't be over 3.4 fluid ounces of material, but this is only 1/4 of an ounce. So I think this will pass. Also having a small pencil sharpener. And pencil sharpeners will create wood shavings, and you can use sticks, pencils, but also one thing I like is chopsticks. They're wooden, these are allowed by TSA, and they can be used to create some kind of fire tinder. And you can eat your lunch. Keeping your devices charged and your flashlights and other items. And so having a battery backup is just going to be great. This is the Dark Energy power bank, and this is great. It's even bulletproof with 12 gauge and I believe 22. But this also has a light to it, and so battery backups are going to be really key if you want to keep your phone charged or again light. And then here we have just a wireless charger, and this is one that actually will charge other items. This can be used as a battery backup as well, and it'll charge your phone. And then I have this small little charger. This actually fits into my phone and it can keep it charged, and I can still use it very easily. And this is also a battery backup. And there's a ton of different options out there to keep your devices charged. But don't forget the cables. Personal hygiene, wet wipes work wonders, and this is something great. Ever since we've had kids, we have kept wet wipes around because they're so convenient. And they're ready, moist, ready to go. But also hand sanitizer. Again, you can only have 3.4 fluid ounces of any liquid, and it includes this. Also, a small little towelette, and these you can dampen and they'll expand, and it's just a very easy, compact way to have a small towel. One thing I would add to this is a small toothbrush with a little toothpaste, and that way I can take care of my teeth. While that is not super vital, hygiene is important in a survival situation because you don't want to get infection and you want to keep yourself fairly clean. A small little pad, and this is one of the Right and Rain pads. I love these. They are just so durable, and you can get them soaked and they don't dissolve and come apart. Also, you need a small pen to go with that, And I like to have a Sharpie. You never know when you might need to write down some notes, you need to put down something, maybe it's a reference number or whatever, and having some way to do that. Obviously you can do that with your phone in your notes, but if for some reason you lose your phone, this gives you a backup. Now first we're going to start out with the Picofire Pro. This is Roaring Fire gear. I love this little pouch. It's very unique. We have a lot of different configurations here, and you have zippers on either side. All right, we're going to start out with a minimal setup, and this is minimal. I have left a lot of items off, but I've tried to cover the most important. And first off is the compass. We have our water, which we're just going to go with the aqua tabs, and that's going to be enough to fit in here. We do have our emergency space blanket, and it'll fit in this back pouch. And I went ahead and put in the Right in the Rain pad and a pen. And then here we have our chapstick, which is going to also be a fire starter, and we have a Bic lighter. And we have our whistle, duct tape, we have a small flashlight, and we have some safety pins. And then here in this compartment we have our medical. Now I just pulled out the contents of that little box, and we have our Band-Aids, our gauze, and we have our alcohol prep pads. So that's going to give me a nice little section right back here, and I know exactly where everything is. Now there are some zippered compartments on the outside, and actually here I put a packet of the electrolytes. There's no food in this one. It is tiny, it's minimal. If you really wanted to, you could throw in one of the Clif Bars in your standard bag. But this is going to be that bare bones little kit. Now here we have it all in the pack, and it's going to be pretty full. I was going to put in the headlamp, it was just too big. So I can actually put this in my carry-on, another part of the bag. And that's one thing you can do as well, is have some items, you know, that you want to have just handy. Now here I just replaced it with the i3T EOS. This is just for AA, and I can carry an extra AA. We're going to see if we can put this thing together and just get everything closed up, because this pouch is fairly small. All right guys, we have this thing packed out. I am careful not to make it too much just full, because it can put stress on the zippers, even though these are great YKK zippers. And so, you know, I would probably take a few items out, but we're going to test out a little bit larger pack setup. All right, this is a fairly larger pack, and this is, again, the Maxpedition Keystone. One thing I like about it is that if I need to ditch my pack, I've got my survival pliers right here, and I can wear it and I can carry it. As a sling pack, as a fanny pack, waist pack, whatever. But it is large, and you're going to have some weight to it, and that's one thing you've got to consider. But there is a lot of stuff in here. In fact, I've really pretty much outfitted this one with all the essential items. Even though some of those others will get you through, this is going to be a plus. Again, guys, you can actually put some of these items in your pack, items that you need to get to, like flashlights, things like that. Now, we're going to go ahead and open up the front compartment. And in here we have medical supplies. Now I have all those Band-Aids, the Imodium, I have some Advil, I added that, also alcohol prep pads, and I dropped in the shears and the Neosporin and any kind of antibiotic ointment. Then we have the pouch right behind it. And that's one thing I like, is there's a lot of organization because they're separate. Here we have our bandana. Now I want this to be things that I'm going to get to fairly quickly. Pretty much. And bandana is important, especially if a lot of smoke's filling a cabin, or you're somewhere and they're burning things. You know, having this is going to be important. And I have my headlamp. Now I could fit my entire headlamp in here, so I love this option. Out came the aqua tabs. Here is my way to filter water, but also I have the Frontier filter straw in this front little sleeve. And so this is my water option. And we have our electrolyte packets, just to keep our energy up, and I have the whistle with the compass already attached, so it's kind of redundant, but this is a nice little piece. Then we have the main compartment, and this is going to have quite a few items in it. First off is we have shelter, or we have a way to keep warm, or again to build a sunshade. And I have the trauma kit that's the first responder from USN ER Doc, and so this just gives me that option. And I went ahead and separated my fire kit. Now this is a small little Maxpedition pouch, and in it I just have the necessary items for a fire kit. I do have the Vaseline tucked down in here, and I have the Sharpie. And so this just gives me a way to start fire. Plus, I know the kit's right here, and I have a little bit larger compass, because really 2 compasses really help you to know your bearings. Sometimes people can doubt that this is the true way, and so 2 compasses give you just another indicator. Battery backup with cables, right in the rain pad, and pin. Then I have my Cliff Bar. I've just got 1 in here. I could have actually put 2, and I have those 2 empty lock sacks. Well, I did put the other Cliff Bar in here. Now here I have the O-clip, redundancy, an extra flashlight. I have the headlamp, I have this, and so this is just going to give me another option, and it's very versatile. Hand sanitizer, again, I can keep this in my standard bag if I'm carrying one. And then we have the wet wipes. This is so many different uses, and one big one is if you're somewhere where you need toilet paper, this really works well. And I went ahead and brought those towelettes where you can just add water. Then we have the very back pouch, and in here I have repair items. Now this is also great for a concealed carry, but obviously if you're flying on carry-on, you're not going to be able to have it. But you could have your holster attached, which is permissible by TSA. And when you get to your destination, it's going to give you a way to conceal carry off body. And we have our chopsticks. They wouldn't fit in the fire kit, so I went ahead and put them back here. And then we have those other items, paracord, zip ties, and again, I took a little twist tie just to keep these together. And we have our safety pins and our duct tape. And guys, that pretty much fills this up. But again, this is large, and the bigger the pack, the more capable it's going to be. But there are trade-offs. It's going to weigh more. It's not necessarily something you're really going to have, but if you're having some kind of backup, you know, you can go with that really small option, and then you can just work your way up to whatever you feel comfortable with. And then again, you can take an entire backpack and fill it up with survival items. I think that's a little bit overkill, but again, it's all about what makes you comfortable. Guys, when it comes to fire, it is essential to survival, and having a good fire kit and knowing how to use it is vital for survival situations. And S.O.C.P makes the best fire starters on the market. Made in the USA, down in Winder, Georgia. Using really high-grade aluminum, they machine some really beautiful handles, a lot of different features, replaceable ferro rods, and a number of other different fire starting tools. You get 20% off using SOOCH20 with the link down below in the description. And a big thank you to S.O.C.P for sponsoring today's video. Guys, there's a link down below that will take you straight to the TSA Gov. Items that you can carry, items that you can check, and those prohibited items. So it gives you a good baseline. But having survival items right on your person can not only be a more convenient way to travel, it could mean the difference between life and death. And guys, if you've had any experience with certain survival items with TSA, leave that down in the comments below, or if you have additions to these small kits. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. So I love if we get into trouble, you know, it can be a problem. All right, let me see how I'm gonna do this. How am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do this? It's great to have some items, not just basic survival items, but items that can get you through while you're just sitting there waiting. Okay. Okay.